After his incredible weekend here in Sao Paulo, has Lando Norris now got one hand on that Formula One World Championship trophy? And after Charles Leclerc came out and defended Oscar Piastri after that incident, was he a little bit unfair to get a 10-second penalty? And was this past weekend another example of why Max Verstappen probably should have won the 2025 championship? This is On Track, talkSPORT's weekly motorsports show, coming to you this week, half from Sao Paulo, Brazil, following the Brazilian Grand Prix, and half from the United Kingdom, where Piers is sat ready to discuss this enthralling, exciting race. Brazil always seems to deliver, of course. Last year we saw Max Verstappen come from 17th to win the race on a wet, windy track with conditions that you wouldn't imagine anyone would actually achieve anything from. And this year, he's obviously gone and done something pretty special as well. But we start the on-track recap by talking about Lando Norris and what a fantastic weekend it has been for Lando, because, I mean, he's got one hand on the trophy now, hasn't he, Piers?
What a race weekend from Norris. This is exactly the part of the season he needed to get some form and have some consistency. And he's looking pretty unbeatable at the moment. I mean, he looks comfortable every time we go to a track at the moment. Pole, fastest lap, race wins are coming easily. And he's extended that gap right when he needed to. And it's going to be hard for, well, I say anyone. I think it's only Piastri now, isn't it, really? I mean, I'm sure to talk about whether Verstappen's realistically, I think, what's the gap? 49 points now?
49 Verstappen, yeah.
Yeah, it takes 2 DNFs in a race out of the final 3 races for him to have a realistic chance. And that also counts on Piastri not outscoring him as well. So, yeah, Norris, I mean, I've said multiple times, I think Piastri's going to get it. But this is the first time where I'm actually like, oh, maybe he won't.
We'll get back to this video in just a second, but first I want to talk to you about this. This is the Nextbase Pico, and this will keep you and other people safe on the roads this festive period. It's a connected compact dash cam, which will record every single journey you make in high definition, and they've got a cheeky little offer going on at the moment, which I think you will like. Now, we know what people are like on the roads. We've all been driving to see friends and family and got cut up by someone, and maybe you're going to a racetrack and you're going to go and watch the professionals do it, and there's probably a lot of professionals not out there on the motorways of the UK. Well, look, this will record everything in high definition, sharp detail. There is a 1K and a 2K version, so whatever happens, it means you've got evidence for whatever goes on the roads. It's not just about the footage though. The Pico's packed with smart safety features that every driver needs, and of course it's from the UK's leading dashcam brand, which was recently crowned Trusted Review's best dashcam of 2025. It's super compact, even I can install it and you won't even notice it on your windscreen. Now pair it with the Nextbase app, set it up, control it from there. It couldn't be simpler for you. There's even a smart parking feature that keeps an eye on your car while you're away, automatically recording if it detects any movement or impact. And trust me, my car just got hit by something in the wind and I'm livid because I didn't have a dash cam installed. Now, if the worst does happen, the emergency SOS system can alert emergency services and share your exact location to help you get help faster. And with Witness Mode Lite, you can quickly alert a friend or family member if you feel unsafe on the road, which is definitely something I reckon parents should be thinking about. And with prices starting at under £100, it's pretty obvious that this would make a fantastic stocking filler this festive period. And actually, you can save yourself 40 quid because between the 6th of November and the 3rd of December, you will get that amount off, making this £59 for the 1K version, which means you could probably put that 40 quid towards going and watching some UK racing. Loads of winter racing going on, which I'm sure you'll have a great time at. You could also treat your family to a meal, but let's face it, just look after yourself. So protect your journeys with confidence this festive season. Visit the Nextbase website for more information, and also pop into Halfords, Argos, Currys and other retailers today. Stay safe, stay connected and enjoy the road ahead.
I've been saying since the start of the season, since we spoke to Gunter Steiner back in, I think it was January, that Oscar Piastri is going to win, and he agreed. And yeah, I think I might have to hold my hands up slightly. So we're going to talk about Lando Norris in just a second. Then we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the controversy around Oscar Piastri and some of the other incidents that happened in the race. Then, of course, we'll talk about Max as well. But Piers, let's just talk about the start of the weekend, the sprint race. Now, I mean, it's actually the first sprint race I've been to in person, and I think there was a decent amount of excitement from the Brazilian fans here in Sao Paulo. The problem you have is that there was a lot of excitement about Gabriel Bortoleto, and obviously it didn't really end too well for Gabriel Bortoleto, which, having waited so long for a Brazilian driver to be driving in Brazil, it was, I mean, it was a nasty incident. We'll talk about that in just a second, but as a driver, imagine the pressure he must have been under this weekend going into this to show off to his friends and family and also become the kind of poster boy for Brazilian motor racing.
I mean, what did you just say? You said it didn't end the best. I mean, a 57G, or was it 59G or whatever it was, crash at turn one. It's about as bad as it can go. And then missing quali. Really unfortunate. It was just one of those incidents, he tried to do a last minute lunge turn while the DRS is just closing on a damp circuit on slick tyres. Massive shunt. But also, I think the main thing that I took away from that incident was, isn't it amazing how far the safety has come? One of my mates literally said, God, if that was 25 years ago, which doesn't even feel that long ago, if that was start of the early noughties even, you'd have been looking at potentially a horrific outcome you don't even want to think about, because that was a massive shunt. And often these cars are more vulnerable when they've had one impact and then they have a second, because a lot of the crash structures have already been damaged. But for him to effectively walk away, I mean, I'm sure he was not in the best shape, but he was fairly shaken. And then to be able to even consider going out for quali that same day is amazing. But yeah, as you mentioned, terrible weekend for Portoletto, crashing in the sprint race, didn't get out for quali, and then crashing in the main race. He will be very much hoping he's got another opportunity next year.
Yeah, he described it as the most disappointing weekend in his whole racing career, which I guess, he's been known to have success. He's been used to having success. We were sat actually on top of the pit lane when this happened, and we heard two noises. So we were like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty serious. There's obviously two cars. And then we saw one car and we were looking for the other car. And it's not until you watch the replay, because obviously on the TV broadcast, I think they got a lot of stick actually, because they were following the leaders. They were following Lando being chased down, or not really being chased down, but having it in hand to take the win. And they took ages for them to get the footage. But I think actually it's more the director's choice to say, well, let's check he's okay first, because you're not going to go straight to it if something horrific has happened. But we were looking for two cars, and then when you watch it back and there's two hits, and that first hit on the kind of left-hand side, and then it spins round onto the right. And we were right there, and you can see the car, and it was, in a serious way. There's some really amazing photos that some of the photographers that were down on that corner have taken of just bits of car flying everywhere. And you can literally see bits of Formula One car. It's not just bits of carbon fiber. It's like specific bits of car. You can just like just flying off, like it completely shed any extremity from that car. And to see him just get out of it and look a bit shaken, but then 3 hours later be sat in that car, which also they'd rebuilt, which is absolutely ridiculous. Everyone I was with was saying, he won't be in qualifying, not a chance. And for the fact that he was in that car, wasn't he, at the end of qualifying, he could have just about made it if they'd had maybe another hour to get that car done, which was amazing. And then, to crash in the first lap, which was a little fault of his own, wasn't it, there on the sort of tighter bit where you're closest to the barrier. Just a gutting weekend. And I think pressure probably played a big part to that. So big shame for the locals here. Let's get on to Lando Norris then, because he took that sprint race win. He's got the confidence right now, hasn't he? Because at the moment, things are just going in his favour. We talk about it a lot in football, and it's just form at the right time. We know the car's been good all season. We know he can win races. Also pretty nuts to think that Lando only won his first race last May, like 2024, given that he's won, 11? Is it 11 races now? Something like that. 11 different tracks, at least. So ridiculous confidence, ridiculous form, and then going into qualifying, putting it on pole position. As soon as we saw that, I don't know what you thought about watching it back home, but as soon as we saw him on pole position, we were like, well, that's him winning, and that's him having a pretty serious gap.
Yeah, I don't know whether I subscribe to the form thing in Formula One, because, with football and tennis and other sports like this, you're kind of doing the same thing on the same, it's just you, let's say tennis, it's just you, a racket and a court. Of course, I'm probably going to get shot down by, the know tennis fans. I don't know much.
Big tennis is going to come for you.
Big tennis, of course. But, it's effectively the same variables every time, just the difference is your player or maybe the surface you're playing on. Whereas in Formula One, it's a lot more different circuit to circuit. I mean, we're going to a very different circuit next, aren't we? And Brazil's pretty unique, fairly short, tight and twisted. Las Vegas, we've only been there, is a new circuit on the calendar, street race, long straights. The car will be set up completely differently. It will feel different. Also, the way that you have to manipulate the car to get the most out of it will be completely different at Brazil Sao Paulo than it will be at Las Vegas and then, Abu Dhabi and Qatar. So it's more of a how well you perform on each weekend, and it's just almost more of a chance of luck as to where the weekends fall, because there will always be circuits you're stronger at and that you just feel more comfortable at straight from the word go, like Norris was this weekend. But we look back to other weekends when Piastri's dominated, let's say, Saudi Arabia, maybe Bahrain, where he got pole fast that race win. That just suited him when he hit the ground running. And I think it's just fortunate for Norris that he's having circuits and weekends at this stage of the season that are in his favour. But no, you're absolutely right. You'd very much rather be in Norris's situation right now. Piastri, no doubt, has got a lot of pressure at the moment. He knows he needs to effectively go out and win every race for the rest of the season to even have a chance, really, at taking the title. We've got that one sprint race, haven't we, in Qatar as well, which, you can get some more points as well. But, it's to have to win is really, really tough. And let's not forget, it's only is it third season in Formula One now? So it's a lot to ask.
If you look at the situation, if he wins every race and Lando comes second, so what's the difference there? 7 points. So that's 7, 14, 21. So that's still only 21 points. And then the sprint race as well. So actually it's not in his hands at all, because when you say like Oscar Piastri can win if he wins every race, will he win the championship? Well, no, unless Lando doesn't score big points.
Well, we said this, but I think we discussed this sort of talking point about 5 or 6 races ago, and there was like 8 or 9 races to go of the season, and the gap was the other way around, wasn't it? Piastri ahead, and if Norris had beaten Piastri in a 1-2, but I think the 1-2 situation has gone out the window. I think Formula One is so close at the moment that we've seen, it's not guaranteed that it's going to be 1-2 every weekend. I mean, we had USA where they were 2-5, we had Singapore where they were 3-4, Azerbaijan crazy, 7th and a retirement for the 2 McLarens. So it's not like they're 1-2 every weekend like we had in Mercedes dominance, or potentially when the Red Bull was really, really strong. So I think Piastri does need to win all of the remaining races this year, because then there's a chance that Norris won't be second. And the pressure's off Norris. He knows he doesn't have to go out and try and go pole, fast lap race, win the sprint. Pressure's off for him. He can just relax, which is why I'm now, for the first time, even ahead of this weekend, I was thinking, no, Piastri's still going to have it. For the first time, I'm like, it's a tall order now, because Norris can even effectively, if he's racing for second or third and someone throws in a move, he can be like, do you know what? Just I'll move out of the way. You take it. I don't mind losing a couple of positions as long as I finish this race somewhere in the top 5, which the McLaren will do if you don't make a large error or get taken out. You're pretty much there, aren't you?
Of course, in the next race, Norris could crash out and Piastri wins the race, and there's 25 points for him straight away. Then things can change really quickly. And I think this is why it's so exciting, the way that this season has played out and has finished. And I think there's going to be a lot of looking back at this season, whatever happens to decisions that teams have made. Obviously, the whole papaya rules, that will be a big conversation, and a lot of what ifs. But when it comes to the actual performance from Lando Norris this weekend, he didn't really put a foot wrong. And for me, when we saw he was on pole position, there was a lot of chat that we were in the group we were in with Brandon, actually, the full-time Formula guy. And we were saying that he's not great when he's on pole position. Will he be leading by the end of the first lap? And only 2 out of about 8 of us thought he'd be leading after the end of the first lap. And I actually think he did very well from the restarts as well, because those can often catch drivers out. We saw Kimi Antonelli get a little bit caught out on one of them. And I mean, everything that he did came together. And when we don't have a lot of things to say about Lando Norris's performance, it means he was really, really very good. And I know that at the end he was saying that he wishes the gap was a bit bigger to his team and then his engineers. But I mean, what more can he do this weekend? He's had an epic one.
Do you know what? I'm going to actually argue against my thing I said a moment ago where there isn't form. I'm going to argue against it now, because when you put it like that, I actually agree that Lando Norris has grown a lot this year as a driver. I enjoy watching Formula One as a spectator, but also my experience in motorsport as a commentator and as a driver. I like to think that I've got a better understanding of what's going on from the driver's perspective than most. And he absolutely is executing and performing at a higher level, I think, than he was at the start to the middle of the year. There was a lot of criticism about his starts going backwards. He was making mistakes. There's that whole bottle, meme that's going around. But if you look at the things that he was being criticized for and losing out positions and losing races from, and, last year and the start of this year, he's actually rectified them. Starts, he's been pretty much bang on. Mistakes have been few and far between. His restarts have been perfect. He's been overtaking decisively. I honestly can't fault him. And then that's leading to weekends like Mexico and Sao Paulo this weekend, where he is unbeatable because there's no chinks in the armor. If he doesn't give anyone an in, then it's no wonder he's going to be able to take pole fast lap race win. And this is the sort of thing that Max Verstappen has done so well, and why he is so good and why he's won 4 world championships is because he just doesn't have really any weaknesses. And Norris is getting to that stage at the end of this year where he's not making those mistakes. And that's why it's so hard for Piastri to get in there. And, the Red Bull, different cars, different situations. So sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's not. But on a performance basis, looking at actually how he is performing, not the results, but how he is performing, what he is doing, can't fault him.
Lewis Hamilton's a big fan favourite with no Brazilian driver until this year with Gabriel Bortoleto. Lewis has always been a fan favourite here just because it's Lewis Hamilton, but also for his love and respect for Ayrton Senna, his idol, who he's been very, very outspoken about how much he influenced him as a driver for his entire career. Lewis made a bit of a mistake this weekend in the Grand Prix. Is this another sign that Lewis Hamilton is kind of dropping off that cliff, unfortunately, that a lot of athletes have? And when I say dropping off the cliff, I mean the cliff of being superstar. I don't mean the cliff of he's not very good anymore. Just that kind of mistake I don't feel Lewis Hamilton would have made in his prime.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis Hamilton still performing at a very high level. It's easy for people to run with things that we say, and we don't think he's washed. We don't think he's washed because he's still.
Well, one of the questions earlier this season was: is Lewis Hamilton washed?
Yeah, I know.
I think we decided
he wasn't
washed.
He wasn't washed. But anyway, he's pretty close to Charles Leclerc. In his 40s, and he's not far off Charles Leclerc, especially in the races. But this weekend, another example. I've spoken about it with Lando Norris a moment ago. We've spoken about it a number of times with Max Verstappen. The difference between a good Formula One driver and a great Formula One driver is not their highs, but their lows and their weekends, the mistakes they make. You look at Max Verstappen in 23, only not winning one race or whatever it was, or not, Red Bull not winning one race. He won all but 3. That's the level you have to be at. That's whatever it was, 19 weekends where he didn't make a mistake. Lewis Hamilton was doing that when he was in Mercedes. He was metronomic. It was win second or third, basically no worse most of the time. Podium every weekend. His podium percentage was way over 50%. Was this, nowadays he's clearly not just gelled with things, and either it's confidence or the way the car feels or the procedures or maybe age or who knows. But you're absolutely right. I completely agree with you. That mistake where he's just clipping the back of another car, that's a mistake you'd expect to see from the likes of a rookie, maybe.
It's also an Alpine. No disrespect to Alpine, they're not the quickest car. So he's overtaking a car that he should have the car and the pace to overtake without any issues, and he's making a silly mistake and clipping the back of Colapinto's car, and that's Lewis Hamilton's race done. And I mean, he must be disappointed. I know he's sort of said some things about being very disappointed with how this has gone this year.
He said it was a nightmare.
He
was a nightmare in his post-race interview.
For Lewis, who is someone who's very not guarded, but very cautious with his words, to say a nightmare kind of says a lot. It kind of says he's not having a good time at the moment. And I saw actually Angela, his, I don't know what her job title is, but she's, it's like
performance coach,
personal trainer, performance coach. And she was in the paddock, and, she's normally all smiles, and there wasn't smiles from her. She looked kind of a little bit on edge, and this is before the Grand Prix had even started. So not a good time for Lewis Hamilton, but his star here is still shining very brightly, seeing how many supporters here are supporting Lewis. And you might have seen his helmet that he kind of just changed. He's got his yellow helmet anyway, but he kind of changed it to incorporate the Brazilian flag colours. And, he will be a legend here. And I'm sure when he's retired, he'll come back to Brazil and everyone will adore him as much, if not more, as they do already. Before we get onto the Oscar Piastri incident, there was a Yuki Tsunoda incident. This all came after the restart. It was actually just after the Oscar Piastri incident. Another driver who said he's had a terrible weekend. Yuki basically suggested it was his worst weekend in Formula One ever. And it wasn't great, was it? Because there were jokes at the start of the weekend when Max Verstappen sort of qualified, when he went out in Q1, that Yuki finally got within so many tenths of Max, because obviously Max had kind of had a bit of a stinker and dropped down, and it's not the positive headline that it sounded like. But for him, another incident where he went into Lance Stroll, just he can't seem to get anything out of that car, can he?
I mean, he was last of the drivers in the race that actually finished on the lead lap. In fact, he was last, nearly a lap down. And the clumsy error which caused the penalty, you watched on board and he tried to go up the inside of one driver. I think was it Ocon? I can't remember at the time, but nearly lost control of the car. Thought he had it recontrolled and then bumped into the back of Stroll. It just screams to me of desperation. Like, he feels, I need to do something. I need to move forward. Otherwise, I'm under the spotlight again. I need to make progress, because also he's in the back of his mind. He'll know that Max Verstappen will have been making progress in exactly the same car. Asterisk for, different setup, new engine. So we'll give him a little bit of slack there, but still, yeah, absolutely not fast, clumsy, errors, penalty. I would be surprised to see Yuki in that car next year. Very surprised, and I will be surprised to see him on the grid next year, because that Red Bull system, you get pushed up and then you fall off the top. You don't tend to drop back down unless you're Liam Lawson or Daniel Kvyat or other people. But it doesn't give him again, talking myself out of my own point. But you get my point. He's not got anywhere to go, has he? Really, unless the rumours are true that he might come back in the future with Honda. But I don't know.
But given we are privy to information that suggests that Yuki Tsunoda doesn't have a future at the Red Bull team and in either team, and we're also privy to the information of young drivers like Arvid Lindblad probably maybe already have signed a deal to race next year for Racing Bulls, that's surely going to get through to Yuki Tsunoda. He's not an idiot. His advisors, his management aren't idiots. So maybe that's why he's making these desperate moves, because he's so desperate to prove that he has got it, because we have seen nice, decent moments from him, but just not recently.
And not consistently enough. I think, was it last weekend or the weekend before, when he had a decent weekend and we were like, look, this is better from Yuki. It was last weekend, wasn't it, in Mexico?
It was the last one in Mexico, yeah.
Yeah. When you get 10th, it's not exactly ideal, isn't it? But
well, you said to me, calling it a decent weekend when he's like that far down tells you how bad his season's been. And
this is my point exactly. Yeah, this is my point exactly. Like, every now and again, we're like, if he continues and if he can consolidate here inside the top 10 and push forward, there's an argument. But when that is the height of his performance, it's not good enough for a Red Bull seat.
No, it's not. But another stinky weekend for him. Let's talk about Oscar Piastri, because I know everyone's got an opinion on this. It was the one that was going around in the WhatsApp group, wasn't it? I saw earlier on our WhatsApp group with Lewis McGlade, our Formula E commentator on talkSPORT. He was asking your clarification, because he's a commentator and he's got one opinion. You're a former driver and analyst, and you're giving another opinion. Then we see Charles Leclerc's come out. And this is the incident, of course, if you haven't actually seen it or you don't remember, where Oscar Piastri on the restart got a really good restart. Kimi was a pretty terrible restart, actually. So he went down the inside of him on that sort of iconic first corner into the S's. And Oscar locked up slightly, hit Kimi Antonelli, and then Kimi went into Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc's wheel went flying. That tyre was actually on the side of the track for quite a long time. I saw one of the creators I was with did a video about how that tyre's. He made a whole narrative about how lonely that tyre must feel, which was quite funny. But Oscar was given a 10-second penalty for that. So Charles Leclerc came out and has sort of suggested that he would say 50-50 blame on Antonelli and Oscar Piastri, which I guess would translate to a racing incident maybe. And Oscar has come out and said, well, I can't just disappear, can I? And obviously you're going to attack. And Charles also said that Kimi Antonelli would have known that Oscar was on his inside. What's your take? I know you've got the official kind of wording, but I'd love to know your take after that.
My take, without diving into too much detail, is if, having done some driver coaching myself and had driver coaches and knowing driver coaches, all of the people, including drivers like Leclerc, would encourage you as a driver. There's a gap there, go for it. And he went for it properly. He didn't half-ass it. He was completely, I don't know if it was wheel to wheel, but that was almost completely alongside at one point. Not exactly in the apex of the corner, but in the braking zone. So Kimi knew he was there. Oscar had every right to be there. It's the right move, and it's the move that he needed to do for the championship. And there was contact at the apex. In my opinion, Kimi didn't give enough space, which then ricocheted him into Charles. And the fact that Charles, who's the one that DNF'd out of it, and he's saying, I don't know why Oscar's got a penalty, I don't agree with that, should have been a racing incident, says to me that surely if anyone's got an axe to grind, it would be Charles. Say, yeah, of course, why would he go up the inside with 3 wide? But no. So from my perspective, everyone that I've spoken to who has raced to a decent level and has an understanding of racing disagrees with the penalty. Now, the wording for me from the stewards after the incident, they've clearly applied the penalty to the wording of the guidelines, which I agree, and I'm very much in favour of there being written guidelines for racing because I think it means there's less ambiguity. However, they're using the fact that he didn't establish the required overlap to and at the apex. Okay, 2 he did at the apex. Okay, arguable. His front wing was, in my opinion, alongside the the mirror. So therefore, there's an argument to say that he did actually. And also they said that he was locking up to try and avoid contact with Antonelli. Again, I think the lockup was not an indication that he was out of control. He made the corner and would have made the corner without the contact. So he was going to be at the apex at a correct speed. And the lockup I think is largely due to the fact that the circuit cambers in quite aggressively on the entry of that corner. So therefore, if he made the corner with the lockup, he's still in control. So both of the points that the stewards have given the penalty for, I can understand with the wording why they've given it, but I just don't agree with the judgment, which I suppose is subjective to a certain extent. But this is surely the subjectivity should be being taken out of it by the guidelines. But if they're not being applied as everyone agrees with, then what's the point of the guidelines?
As you say, the thing that struck me that you've just said there is it was the right move. And it was like, we're watching it and you're like going, okay, so Kimi's got a slow restart and he's going to get on the inside of him. And Kimi's going to know that because Kimi can see him, because it's not like he's in a blind spot. He's very much there. Yeah. And then, it doesn't leave him enough space. And it's a shame that it's, another driver who was innocently going around the outside of this. And actually, I think he was holding back slightly because he didn't want to pass him before the restart. Past Kimi was Charles. And then he's the one that goes out and compounds a miserable weekend for Ferrari. If you've ever been to an F1 race and been lucky enough to be in the paddock, you'll see that behind the paddock, they always start packing down while the race is on, because once the drivers are in the car, there's no media activity that they need to do. There's no guests going into the garage or anything like that. And they're all packing down. And I went down there sort of halfway through the race, and Ferrari were very quickly packing down. And Charles Leclerc, actually, I was with a guy from Formula One chatting to him, and he said, I've got to go. Charles is going to go and do his media now. And it was lap, whatever it was, 40 or something like that. And it's like, oh, okay, so he's making a quick exit. So a miserable weekend for Ferrari. I'm here in São Paulo following the Brazilian Grand Prix, and I have to say, this city comes alive when the Formula One's on. I learned this weekend that there's more helipads per square mile in this city than any other city in the world. So I can't verify that. Someone told me that. But having seen how many helicopters were flying in with probably quite important guests, given the size of these helicopters, I would lead to be thinking that's probably quite true. I think the fans this weekend were, once Lewis was out and once Gabriel Bortoleto was out, I think they took Kimi Antonelli under their wing. I think they were very behind him. And I guess it's that kind of young protege. They always love a young driver. I mean, Lewis Hamilton came here as a young driver and certainly got that connection straight away with the Brazilian crowd. So it was fantastic to see him get his second podium. We were hoping that he might somehow pull out a race win, but I think it was pretty apparent straight away that it was going to be Lando Norris's day unless he did something wrong. A shout out to other drivers. We had Racing Bulls were pretty impressive. There was one shot actually that I saw when I watched the race back where I can't remember who it was, but he was being chased down by 2 Racing Bulls. They were like side by side, the white cars chasing him down. And it was like in either mirror, he's probably got 2 Racing Bulls chasing him down. So great result for them, with Liam Lawson coming 7th and Isaac Hadjar coming 8th. Although Isaac Hadjar did say starting 5th and finishing 8th isn't a successful weekend, which is very true. Ollie Behrman, he must have impressed you, Piers, because he has started to show now that consistency that we talked about on the show a couple of weeks ago, actually, with the chat we met from Elite Motorsport who'd worked with Ollie Behrman and said, how impressed he'd been straight away and how quickly Ollie Behrman had got up to speed in the sort of F4 car, I think it was. And now we're seeing Ollie Behrman, he was up there in qualifying. He was showing great race pace and, finishing 6th for Haas, throwing, where was Ocon? Right. I mean, I haven't even got Ocon in my 12th. I mean, embarrassing Ocon in some ways. He's going to be the next Ferrari driver, surely.
Surely. This second half of the season for Behrman has been really quite impressive, especially when you consider Ocon's experience and Ocon's stock. Behrman, rookie driver, fairly young, didn't have a scintillating F2 year last year, did he, along with Kimi Antonelli, but they were both promoted. And both those drivers are showing that actually at this stage of the season, by the end of their first year, they're very much warranting a Formula One drive. So clearly those driver development programs know what they're doing. But Behrman, I mean, to have that Haas, which granted has had some upgrades, so therefore is getting better, but to consistently, as we've been mentioning before, and as my little pet thing at the moment is consistently be up there. I mean, he was quick in sprint quali, he was quick in the sprint race, he was quick in qualifying, quick in the race, got P6. Ferraris didn't finish, but still would have been in the points quite considerably, comfortably, when Ocon's nowhere near. Hamilton, his days are numbered. How many days there are, we don't know. I think he'll do next year. I hope he does next year, but that means that there's going to be a seat available. Behrman's the obvious choice, isn't it? And with performances like he's showing, maybe he's the real deal. And we'll only know when he gets a front-running car, and I hope that he does get that at some point in the near future.
And we come on to our final point on the race this weekend, and that is Max Verstappen, because with Lando Norris and his lead, it feels like Max's achievement this weekend has kind of got a bit under the radar, which is absolutely ridiculous, because Max Verstappen had a stinker in Q1. Worst ever Q1, I think they were saying on the broadcast. First ever Q1 he's gone out of where it wasn't through a fault of his own, where he's crashed or the car's gone wrong or someone's impeded him.
On pace
purely
alone.
just because he hasn't got the pace. And they obviously made the decision then of going, well, look, we've got 4 races to go, including this one that we've just had. We're going to, I think he had a new engine, he had various new parts, and he started from the pit lane. And we were saying, right, surely if Max wins this race from the pit lane, that will be a bigger story than it was last year. And he came pretty close coming third, didn't he? And it's like, I don't really know how it happened, because he made up a few places and then there was the restart and we were like, wow, he's made up 3 places. And then suddenly he's in the top 5. And you've just kind of not noticed the way he's carved through the field in a car where Yuki Tsunoda should, in theory, have the same car and be carving through the field while he's going backwards, going nowhere. Where does this rank in Max Verstappen drives for you? Compare it maybe to last year's drive from 17th to 1st in wet conditions.
Do you know what? It becomes so normal for Max. Honestly, amazing. And last year was amazing in wet conditions. This year, also amazing. We've seen drives from the back at Sao Paulo, and you can overtake at Sao Paulo. Lewis Hamilton, 2021, from the back to 8th, what was it? And then 10th to the win. And that sprint weekend, again, similar situation. They decided to go with a new power unit. The new power unit does seem to have an advantage, especially when you've got you've only got to do 3 or 4 races on that power unit. You can turn it up more of the time, whereas a lot of the other teams will be turning theirs down at this point of the season just to get them to the end without having to take any grid penalties. But these are things that you have that help you, but they don't do it for you. And Max, I mean, just to go through every single driver, cut through the field so efficiently, the pace he had, clearly the new engine had a bit of an advantage. Clearly they made some setup changes, which they can do, which no one else could, and they needed to because they had no pace, and Yuki still didn't have much pace in the race. But you still need to drive the race. He got lucky, yes. I think the puncture he got before the virtual safety car actually was very fortuitous. It meant he got off that hard time maybe sooner than he would have otherwise done. So things went in his direction. But how many times have we seen amazing drives? How many times do we have to say amazing drive? And these are drives that I don't think we would see from other drivers, a very few drivers, and we don't see them that often. We're seeing them 2 or 3 times a year from Max Verstappen, and then also he doesn't have days. This is why I think if you look at the performance of drivers over the year, it's hard to argue against that Max has been the best driver this year, and some, like head and shoulders above the likes of Lando Norris, because even though Norris has switched it on recently, it has only been recently. Max has been pounding in results all year in a lackluster Red Bull, and continues to do so even when there's adversity in his way. And I think it will go down as one of the great non-championship years should he not win the championship, which is looking very unlikely that he will win it. And
I'm sure there's an equation.
If that Red Bull's any good next year, then everyone else better watch out, because he's operating at a very high level.
Yeah, I think that there'll be an equation, won't there, of like positions made up with car rating of that weekend, and they'll work it out, and Max should win because in theory, Lando's got a better car, whatever. 63 laps it took him to get from the pit lane to P3. So 71 lap race and 63, and he was there in P3, and then he just couldn't quite get the last 2. But I mean, what an epic drive from him. He kind of said of his title chances now, you can forget about that. 49 points behind, it does seem ridiculous. He probably need the two McLarens to crash into each other and take each other out of every race now whilst he get winning. So I think it's very unlikely. But as you say, an incredible year, and it will go down as one of the best years that someone drove and didn't win the championship. We go on, of course, to Las Vegas. What are you predicting for Las Vegas in a couple of weekends' time?
I think, do you know what, Las Vegas, I fancy those Mercedes again. They were quick last year, weren't they? Cool conditions. The Mercedes are quick this weekend, not far off the McLaren in cool conditions again. I fancy George Russell, but Kimi could be strong as well. So I'm going to go and put my neck out and say a Mercedes win.
One whisper I heard in the paddock this weekend is that Christian Horner will be taking over as team principal in some kind of potential, I guess, buyout, because I think the team's for sale, of Alpine in 2027. What do you make of that?
I haven't heard that rumour, but I've not been quite as much, fingers in pies, man on the ground as you have. But I can see it happening.
I've been a lot more man on the ground this week than normal. So yeah, this is. I heard it from two different sources that this is the latest, most likely scenario.
All right. I mean, if you're someone, Alpine or whatever the group is, got Enstone F1, and you're like, right, I want to hire the best team principal to build this team from effectively nothing to a world championship. You look at people that have done it, and you have a CV, I have a short list of one. Because let's not forget, Christian Horner effectively took that, what was going to be a Ford entry, the Jaguar entry, from almost a laughing stock of the grid to winning world championships in, was it 8-9 years or something like that?
Yeah, under 10 years.
Very impressive. And, I know he's robbed a lot of people up the wrong way. There's been controversy, but there's absolutely no doubting that happens. That doesn't happen by accident. He knows what he's doing, and he could turn that team around.
Could be very interesting. We will watch this space on that one. If you're Pierre Gasly and you're still in that team in 2027, you might want to worry because he's already got rid of him once. Right, that is it for our on-track recap look back at the São Paulo Grand Prix. We're going to be back in São Paulo actually in a month's time for the Formula E São Paulo E-Prix, which is always good. So we'll have live commentary of that on talkSPORT 2 and the talkSPORT app as well.